Welcome to Amazing 7, and today we are discuss about why are university students protesting in the United States. Protesters have set up encampments on campuses across the country, and hundreds have already been arrested. What are their demands and how have things escalated? Protests over the Israel-Hamas war have reached boiling point at U.S. universities, leading to the arrests of hundreds of protesters on campuses across the country. Police have been involved in clashes with pro-Palestinian protesters who have set up encampments on dozens of campuses. But what are the students' demands, how have things escalated, and where have people been arrested? Here's what has happened so far. What are the protests about? The message from the students in encampments has been simple. They want their universities to stop doing business with Israel, or any companies that support its ongoing war in Gaza. The demand has its roots in the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, a decades-old campaign against Israel's policies toward the Palestinians. But the specifics vary from each set of protesters at different universities. Among them are these key demands. Stop doing business with military weapons manufacturers that are supplying arms to Israel. Stop accepting research money from Israel for projects that aid the country's military efforts. Be more transparent about what money is received from Israel and what it's used for. Stop investing college endowments with money managers who profit from Israeli companies or contractors. Endowments are the holdings and investments that institutions of higher education, foundations and some nonprofits manage as a kind of perpetual savings account. On many campuses, students pushing for these changes say they don't know the extent of their university's connections to Israel. Universities with large endowments spread their money across a vast array of investments, making it challenging to identify where it all lands. Universities are required to report gifts and contracts through foreign sources, but the government has long said these sources are massively underreported. Around 100 U.S. colleges have reported gifts or contracts from Israel totaling $375 million, £300 million over the past 2 decades, according to the Education Department database. There have also been pro-Israel counter-protests on several campuses, with some Jewish students saying the protests have veered into anti-Semitism and made them feel unsafe on their university's premises. What sparked the protests? The mass protests escalated dramatically across the country after students set up a tent encampment at Columbia University in New York on Wednesday, the 17th of April, demanding the school divest from companies they claim profit from Israeli apartheid. It was a strategy a small group of pro-Palestinian student activists had been planning for months, though one of them, Columbia graduate student Elia Sun, said a lot of the subsequent protesting has been heavily improvised. There's been a lot of work, a lot of meetings that went into it, and when we finally pulled it off, we had no idea how it would go, they said. I don't think anyone imagined it would take off like it did. Police tried to clear the encampment on the 18th of April, arresting 108 protesters in the process. But those arrests have proved an inspiration for other students across the country and motivated protesters at Columbia to regroup. There has been some coordination in the countrywide protests, as students at Columbia held a phone call with around 200 other people interested in starting their own camps at other universities ahead of the week commencing the 22nd of April. But they haven't been orchestrated by one particular movement, most have been put together by separate student groups. In many cases, various student groups at one university have banded together to put the protests together. Escalation at Columbia University. The encampment had become a calmer place after the 18th of April, as a dialogue was opened between the university and students. But the situation escalated again when police in riot gear raided one of the university's halls and arrested around 30 to 40 people on Tuesday, the 30th of April. The raid came hours after New York City Mayor Eric Adams said the demonstration at the Ivy League school must end now, adding it had been infiltrated by professional outside agitators. The university confirmed it had called in the New York Police Department after protesters chose to escalate the situation through their actions. After the university learned overnight that Hamilton Hall had been occupied, vandalized, and blockaded, we were left with no choice, a university spokesman said in a statement. The students maintained they did not pose a danger and called on police to back down. Police confront protesters at University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. Police descended on the encampment at University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, on the 2nd of May, arresting students. They met with resistance from protesters, who had erected barricades and were camped out with hard hats, goggles and respirator masks. Here is a summary of 7 universities where other major campuses' protests have led to mass arrests so far. Number 1. New York University. More than 100 students and staff were arrested at New York University on the 22nd of April. Officers moved on the crowds shortly after they set the demonstration a 4 p.m. deadline to disperse, and claimed that protesters were joined by people, whom we believe were not affiliated with New York University. Several tents had been set up in the plaza where many were protesting in. A group of pro-Israel counter-protesters had also been in the plaza Monday afternoon. In the evening, a line of university staff members linked arms in front of the protesters to section them off from police before they were arrested and taken away themselves. A spokesperson for the NYPD confirmed 120 people were taken into custody, 116 of whom were released with summonses for trespass, giving them a future date to appear before a judge or magistrate. The remaining 4 were issued with desk appearance tickets for more serious offenses, meaning they are required to appear at a criminal court on a future date. Number 2. Yale University. Police arrested 48 protesters on the 22nd of April, including 4 who were not students, after they refused to leave an encampment on a plaza at the center of the university's campus in New Haven, Connecticut. Number 3. California State Polytechnic University. Students seized 2 buildings on the university's campus on the 22nd of April, using furniture, tents, chains and zip ties to block themselves in. Police say 3 students have been arrested, but the protest is still ongoing and the campus has been forced to close until at least next week. Numerous laws have been broken, including resisting arrest, destroying and damaging property, criminal trespass, and more, a university statement read on Wednesday. Number 4. The Ohio State University. About 50 protesters had gathered on campus on the 23rd of April to share stories about their connections to the Palestinian people before marching, an Ohio State spokesperson said. 2 pro-Palestinian students were arrested during the protest and charged with criminal trespassing after repeated warnings to be quiet, they said. Number 5. Emerson College. Protests began on the 23rd of April, when about 80 students and other supporters occupied a busy courtyard on the downtown Boston campus. The next day, college officials warned the students that some of the protesters were in violation of city ordinances, including by blocking a right-of-way and fire hydrants, violating noise laws and setting up tents in an alley owned by the city. The college said in a statement that campus police were offering escort services for students after officials received credible reports of some protesters engaging in targeted harassment and intimidation of Jewish supporters of Israel. Police said 108 people were arrested in protests around the university on the night of the 24th of April and 4 officers suffered non-life-threatening injuries, 3 minor and 1 more serious. No protesters were injured, they added. Videos on social media showed police and the pro-Palestinian protesters clashing. Number 6. The University of Texas. Police officers and state troopers forcefully arrested 33 students protesters and a local news photographer on the 24th of April after university officials and the governor called authorities. Protesters said they had planned a walkout and march to the main campus lawn, where students would occupy the space and host events throughout the afternoon. But the university said in a statement that it would not tolerate disruptions, like those at other campuses. Number 7. Northeastern University. About 100 people were detained at a pro-Palestinian protest at Northeastern University's Boston campus on Saturday the 27th of April, university officials said. What began as a student demonstration 2 days ago was infiltrated by professional organizers with no affiliation to Northeastern, the university said in its statement on 10. The university said that of approximately 100 people police detained, students who produced a valid Northeastern ID were released. They will face disciplinary proceedings within the university, not legal action, the statement said. Those who refused to disclose their affiliation were arrested. How are U.S. universities dealing with protesters? Some universities have been negotiating with them and allowing them space to protest peacefully, while others have quickly turned to law enforcement to prevent demonstrations from progressing. Universities such as Columbia have tried both tactics, asking law enforcement for help a day after the protests initially sparked, then showing the remaining protesters more patience in the following days until the police raid on the 30th of April. Other universities have tried to stamp out protests before they truly form, with police cracking down on protesters early into demonstrations. After a tent encampment popped up the 25th of April at Indiana University Bloomington, for example, police with shields and batons shoved into protesters and arrested 33 people. Hours later at the University of Connecticut, police tore down tents and arrested 1 person. On the same night at Ohio State University, Police clashed with protesters just hours after they gathered. Those who refused to leave after warnings were arrested and charged with criminal trespass, said a university spokesperson, citing rules barring overnight events. Pressure is growing on the universities to deal with the protests ahead of graduation ceremonies, most of which are planned for early May. The University of Southern California has already canceled its main ceremony over safety concerns, but most have remained coy. Did you enjoy this video? Check out other clips of Amazing 7 and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified our latest videos.